Hi again everyone, so welcome back to my channel. So for this video, I'm going to tackle about the topics what I've learned in chapter 11. So if you're interested in this video, please keep on watching. So in chapter 11, the topics is all about it is actually the topic discussed from chapter 1 to chapter 10. It's more deeper and more application. So this is where the troubleshooting begins, and let's start. If you're going to do network in a small business with a large growth forecast, the primary influencing factor will be the ability of device to support modularity. The devices with a fixed type number of interfaces will not support growth. Redundancy is an important factor, but typically found in a large enterprises. Network monitoring is also an important consideration, but not as important as modularity. For example, if your newly hired network technician is given to a task of ordering new hardware for a small business with a large growth forecast, what factor should be most concerned? Um, so devices with support of modularity is the most concern if you were going to have an hardware for a small business. So, small business today needs an internet access and use an internet router to provide these needs. A switch is required to connect the two host devices and any IP phones or network devices such as printer or a scanner. The switch may be integrated into router. A firewall is needed to protect the business computing assets. While the redundancy is not normally found in a small business companies, but slightly larger small companies might use fourth density redundancy or have redundant internet providers. So, a network design consideration will be more important to a large corporation than a small business. Redundancy is very important if you were working in a network with large network than a small business. That's it. So, which two types of traffics this require delay sensitivity delivery? Voice and video. Because voice and video traffics have delay sensitivity characteristics and must be given priority over other traffic types such as web, email, and file transfer traffic. Several elements that are needed to scale a network include documentation of the physical and logical topology, a list of devices that are used on the network, and an analysis of the traffic on the network. So, a network administrator for a small company is contemplating how to scale the network over the next 3 years, accommodate project growth. Which three types of information should be used to plan the network growth? Um, if you were in focus to the network growth, let's first documentation of the current physical and logical topologies. Second is analysis of network traffic based on the protocols, application, and services used on the network. Then the third one is inventory of the devices that are currently used on the network. Saving is a must if you were going to scale the growth of your network. So, in assessing the traffic flow patterns and network traffic types using a protocol analyzer, it captures the traffic during peak utilization times to get a good presentation on the different traffic types. Perform the captures on the different network segments. Traffic flows patterns should be gathered during peak utilization times to get a good presentation on different traffic types. The captures should also be performed on different network segments because some traffic will be local to a particular segment. The four classes of threats are as follows: the hardware threats, environmental threats, electrical threats, and maintenance threats. The hardware threats is physical damage to servers, routers, switches, cabling, plant, and workstations, while the environmental threats, temperature extremes, too hot or too cold, or humidity extremes, too wet or too dry. Electrical threats, voltage spikes, sufficient supply voltage or brownouts, unconditioned power or noise, and total power loss. While the maintenance threats are poor handling on key electrical components, lack of critical spare parts for cabling and for labeling. Which two type of network threats is intended to prevent authorized users from accessing resources? The DOS attacks. Network reconnaissance attacks involves unauthorized discovery and mapping of network and network systems. Access attacks and trust exploitation involve unauthorized manipulation of data access to systems or users' privilege, while the DOS service attacks are intended to prevent legitimate users and devices from accessing network resources. One of the most common types of access attacks uses a packet sniper to yield user accounts and passwords that are transmitted as clear text. Repeated attempts to log into the server to gain unauthorized access constitute another type of access attack, limiting the number of attempts to log into the server and using encrypted passwords will help prevent successful logins through these types of access attacks. Stateful packets inspections on a firewall checks that incoming packets are actually legitimate responses to requests originating from hosts inside the network. Packet filtering can be used to permit or deny access to resources based on IP and MAC address. Application filtering can permit or deny access based on a port number. URL filtering is used to permit or deny access based on a URL keywords. A firewall feature used to ensure the packets coming into a network are legitimate response initiated from internal host is a stateful packet inspection. The purpose of network security authentication is to require users to prove who they are. Authentication, authorizations, and accounting are network services collectively known as AAA. Authentication requires users to prove who they are. Authorization determines which resources the users can access, and accounting keeps track of the actions of the users. Those firewall is very important to secure your network. When in this certain scenario, a network administrator is issuing to log in a block 180 attempts block for 180 attempts to within 30 command on a router. Which threat is the network administrator trying to prevent? A user who is trying to guess a password to access the router. It is because the login block for 180 attempts to within 30 command will cause the device to block authentication after 2 unsuccessful attempts within 30 seconds for a duration of 180 seconds. Device infecting the router, a link and nothing to do the router. The router configuration cannot prevent unauthorized access to the equipment room. A worm will not attempt to access a router to propagate to another part of the network. Using the SSH to connect to a router, it allows a secure network remote connections to the router and command line interface. There are 4 steps to configure the SSH or the Cisco router. First, set the source name and domain name. Second, generate access RSA keys to be used to encrypting and decrypting the traffic. Third is create users' IDs, passwords, and of the users who will be connecting. Lastly, enable the SSH on the VTY lines on the router. SSH does not need to be set on any physical interfaces, nor does an external authentication server need to be used. While it is good to configure a banner to display legal information for connecting users, it is not required to establish enable SSH. A ping is a round-trip time statistic as shown as milliseconds. The larger the number, the more delay. A baseline is critical in time slow performance. By looking at the documentation of performance when the network is performing fine and comparing it to the information when there is a problem, a network administrators can resolve problem faster. So that's all for the chapter 11. I hope you enjoy watching and I hope you learn more with me. So thank you for watching.